Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. In previous episodes in this miniseries, we talked about what it means to be in an Exodus season. Last episode, we focused on breaking free from living as slaves as we set up long-term camps just outside our promised land. Prior to this, we unpacked how our fears, doubts, unresolved trauma, and the anxiety that these provoke often cause us to wander aimlessly in the wilderness of our own darkest hour. Today, I want to talk to you about putting in the work to heal as we boldly and confidently take those first steps into our promised land. In this episode, you'll get some background on how to assess and repair broken and unhealthy areas in your life. You'll gain more insights into how to navigate your Exodus journey, and you'll learn some tips to use on your healing journey as you prepare to enter your promised land. I ended last episode by asking you to meditate over the week on the wilderness you've been wandering around in your own life. When you consider this wilderness, I bet you started to notice some things on your path in life that are broken down, unhealthy, and at times abandoned right there in the middle of your road. Each one of these broken, unhealthy, and abandoned things become obstacles that block us, slow us down, or distract us from working toward those goals and those end game things that we've been talking about throughout the series that we have to set up and that we have to put the work in to continue working toward. So last episode, we took a closer look at how we often end up setting up those camps right in the middle of our Exodus, which our Exodus is supposed to be this pathway or this throughway to get us from our past and this one place that we're no longer supposed to be, we no longer want to be, and to take this journey that leads us toward the place that we're destined to be, that promised land that we know that we have to enter because everything we want is in this new space. Perhaps you wondered about your own reasons for doing this over the last week as you meditated on being a slave to wandering in your wilderness. So I want to zoom in today on those broken and unhealthy areas and obstacles in your journey. So to begin, I want to talk about how there are words that are very similar, but they often take on very different and distinct meanings. So let's take the word simple versus easy, for instance. I've mentioned this in other episodes, that there are a lot of things in our life, in our internal healing journey, or even when we're trying to rebuild and restore some of the broken areas in our physical world, where contextually things can be simple in concept, but they're not necessarily easy to execute. And so, but those two words, a lot of times we'll interchange them, but really when you think about just how I used them in that context, you'd have to build a lot of language around each one of those words to give them the right context so that you know exactly what they mean. Like this is a simple task is not the same as this is an easy task, because we're saying this is a simple task that has a lot of maybe hard steps and hard work about it. It's not necessarily easy. When I think about this Exodus journey and how we're only supposed to be on it as we are headed toward our promised land and headed toward that space that inhabits our goals and our destiny, we can sometimes get hung up on words that come into play. So when we're doing that self-reflection, or maybe we're speaking with a therapist or a mentor or somebody who we value their feedback in our life, we might hear words fix and heal. And both of these words are very similar in their meanings because they mean to like repair or mend something that is out of order, that is broken, that needs to be restored. And these words also have dual meanings. So if you were to look up the definition of these, and then maybe you clicked like the synonyms and you go into the thesaurus and you say, okay, what are very similar words? And then you start to see like these are good matches, near matches, imperfect matches. And you start to look at them and you say, okay, why would I use that word if I have to do all this other work to really establish what its meaning is? And then on the flip side, you have words that take on negative connotations. And some of those negative connotations trip us up. And we don't want to hear those when we're trying to be proactive about getting stuff, realigned in our lives or healing things in our lives. And so, like when we hear the word fix, there are positive and negative connotations with that word, but for whatever reason, when we hear it in the context of our life and the things going on in our life and the things that we need to work out or improve or change, the moment you say fix, we start to take that negatively. We think of like, oh, you're telling me I need to fix my attitude. You're telling me I need to fix something. That it's very, it's focused on you doing something wrong. You're doing something wrong and that needs to be fixed. And I'm not saying that when someone tells you that you need to fix this or you need to fix that or this needs to be fixed, that is literally what they're saying. I'm saying we perceive, oh, that's a negative, almost an insult. That's a negative critique and we internalize that and we take it very personally. Fix is also one of those words that kind of screams, there's something in us that's the problem. And so I understand why that's a problem. It's been a problem for me. And sometimes when I am trying to self-reflect or I'm trying to talk through something with someone else who I look up to and I value what they're going to say back into my life, I will even carefully choose my words because I don't want to set the stage with these words that I have a hang up about, which again, doesn't have much to do with the person trying to help me through something or guide me and give me the right tools to bring into my situation. And it's about my hang up. And I know that I'm not alone. I know it's probably speaking to you when I say that we internalize that, which then defeats the perspective that we need to have that's going to lead us instead of to these proactive thoughts and like planning. It brings us to this place of dread and doubt, and it starts to kill our confidence. And then it shifts our perspective of our actual self-worth, because then it literally diminishes our self-worth and our value because we've attached ourselves. We're the problem here. Maybe we are the problem in some instance, but a lot of times we're looking at the larger situation and all the little moving parts. And so we don't want to look at our situations and just be like, well, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. That is really defeating. It will be very difficult if you get yourself into that mindset and you're labeling every single tiny little minute detail. I'm the problem. I'm the problem. You are going to have a problem working through anything with that because it's going to bury alive your self-worth or anything that's left of it. So heal, on the other hand, is a word that we often see, used when we're working on ourselves or we're working on things in ourselves or in our lives that do need to be fixed or do need to be mended, but it's a completely different thing. We're almost like outside of it then. We're not the active agents that are the problem, although we might be the active agent that has to do a lot of stuff in order to, facilitate that healing and that mending and that repairing. When we think about what the word heal means on, a literal sense, it comes down to this. So there's two different definitions that I really, really like. One is to assess and allow something to become sound, whole, or healed again. And then the second one is to heal something is to alleviate woundedness, anguish, and or stress. So I really like how these words set us up to be in a proactive mindset right away. And of these two words, fix and heal, healing is the one that also often requires the removal of something that is causing the wound or the anguish or the stress. And then clearly we can't remove ourselves from our own situations. We can't remove ourselves from our own world and life. So the word heal is something that I often gravitate when I'm thinking about how to restore and rebuild areas in myself that are broken or areas in my world that are broken. Do you see where I'm going with all of this? This idea of assist and allow and alleviate. What do all these have in common? Well, they're all help concepts. At the center of it is this focus of help. Help from others, help from devices and outside sources, and actions that we take to lighten the load, to reduce the severity of a problem, suffering, or a lack of something needed. It's steps that we take to ease, relieve, and to take off the edge. So when I meditated on this Exodus journey and inability to enter my promised land over this last week, I did the homework too. I started thinking about my struggles to do everything on my own, and kind of foundational stuff is in place in my own experiences that has me, struggling with this. It's not a desire to do everything. It's almost like I feel like I have to do everything on my own. And part of this for me stems from choosing paths that aren't necessarily easy or traditional routes. And so a lot of times the people that are in my circles, are like, she's got to do her own thing. Like, it's out of our wheelhouse. She's got to do her own thing. But, regardless of how I ended up here, which I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that inform this desire that I have, or this drive, there's a better word, this drive that I have to do things on my own. I first want to talk about how the emotions play into this, because I know I'm speaking to you when I say that you can feel like you're being trampled, defeated, and beat up when you are stuck on this path. So when you're setting up your camp on your Exodus route and you're in this throughway where other people in your circle or other people around you might be passing through, and they're not going to stop, and they're not going to, help you or walk with you on your leg of this journey. And you can feel like you are, in the way. And this leads to this kind of like suffering in silence. And I definitely struggle with this idea of suffering in silence. And there's a good reason why I do. It's not just like this thing where I decided like, oh, woe's me, I'm just going to be by myself. It's definitely like after, tons of experiences of being underwhelmed by the support that I get from different individuals in my circles. And it doesn't matter if I'm not talking about like, this isn't my family. This is like lots of different circles that we run in. It can be our work situation. It can be our educational situation. It could be community, different types of communities within our community that we belong to. Or I'm talking about all of these different circles. Sometimes what I've learned in the past is you ask for help, or you tell people like, I need support, and you get this like, half-baked kind of response, or, oh, how good for you. Like, everything's over text, right? Or these private messages. And it's like, oh, how good for you. Or I'm praying for you. And that's it. And when, we're going through something that is difficult, or we're running into difficulties along our way, and that's the response that we get, is this very like distant, I'm rooting for you and I'm praying for you. And then the, let me know if you need anything kind of thing, starts to make you feel like icky, because then you're like, well, God, I kind of am in a subtle way asking you for support, or asking you to be there for me by reaching out to you. Like, I initiated this. And then your response is like, step back. Like, well, I don't know, if you ask me a few more times and maybe say it the right way with the magic words here, then maybe I'll, call you. And I know we've gotten out of the habit of just picking up the phone and calling, but we've also gotten out of the habit of calling the person who reaches out to us by now the new normal standards of, well, I'm going to send people this private message, and I'm going to send people this text and let them know what's going on in my life. And then we text back, and then nothing. And then we're just like, well, if they need me, they're going to reach out to me again. And it's this awful new normal. I don't like it. I've been listening to
other podcasts about this very topic and really trying to heal some areas in my life and trying to make some changes in my life, because there was one very traumatic instance in my life, and it was only a few years ago, that all of these kind of dysfunctional types of interactions and these reasonings behind why I feel like I'm supposed to suffer in silence and just do things on my own and just struggle through things on my own kind of stems back to a lot of different things, but it all came to a head when my husband was going through cancer treatments. So my husband a few years ago was diagnosed with throat cancer, and he had to go through chemo and radiation. And, life was very complicated during that time. We had to make a lot of changes in our everyday routines. My husband was gradually getting sicker and sicker, and it's awful to watch somebody go through cancer treatments. It's just awful. And I was very hopeful. We caught it early, so there wasn't a lot of dread and fear that, oh my gosh, he's going to die from this, or it's not going to work. And my faith was really strong. I really believe like God led us to answers early on, and he really worked through me, and maybe I'll talk about that in greater length in another episode. But for the sake of this episode, I just want to focus on the fact that here we are. We're in the really, really messy, yucky middle of this. Sometimes you feel like you're just sinking in this mucky, yucky day in, day in, day in, and everybody like abandons you. And that was how I felt, like no one knew what to say or knew what to do. And when we would go around people, it was this very awkward thing. People didn't like to see him that way. It was very weird because, my husband on his own account, doesn't take the best care of himself. So he's carried around extra weight for the last few years, several years. And when he started to lose weight because he couldn't eat, he was going through the treatment, and the radiation was isolated to his throat area. So you can imagine he's hardly able to eat. He's on all these nausea medications and, just suffering, and he starts to lose weight. And the only kind thing that people would say, friends and family too, at functions, when I would finally get him to go somewhere, is, oh, you look so great. Look at how much weight you lost, which was like, you're missing the point. And it's fine to be like excited to see him losing the weight, but like not the right timing. Like maybe save that for, I don't know, another time, or say something a little bit more meaningful about the fact that he's suffering. And so I was watching that kind of stuff go on, where if people acknowledged, tried to say anything at all, it was that, which to me is just another layer of awkward to listen to that, and totally misguided. It was like people immediately just pulled away. Hardly people reached out even to me to text me, hey, how you doing? Just thinking about you. It was really weird. Like, even friends and family members, like maybe one or two texts over the entire 12 week period of time. We're entering into the holidays. We had I can count on one hand how many people were like, did other things. Like someone sent us food, a loved one, also in addition to that, texted me to check in with me a few times. And, there was only like 2 people who picked up the phone and called me. And even that, like no one invited even me to go and do things, even if it was, let's just grab lunch or let's just grab dinner. And so there was like 1 or 2 things that I ended up doing, leaving my husband behind, get him all tucked in bed. And like, he's right after a week of chemo and radiation on a Friday, I could tuck him in, and usually I would work. That's what I do. So when I self-isolate, I just work harder. I just get into my work, and that's what I was doing to kind of get through it, but also keep my mind off of, I can't sit here and think all day about his treatment and about his situation. That's not going to do anybody any good. So I just kept busy in this moment of feeling very abandoned and very much alone. And the 2 times that I actually did go out and do something socially, I instigated it. I said, hey, let's go do this thing. And one of them was like this extravagant kind of date night thing that I planned. And I was like, I'm usually not the person who plans things. So it was very like disorienting to be like, okay, here I am in this situation where I'm starting to recognize all these things, and I'm psychoanalyzing them, like, what is going on? Where is everybody? And maybe I've been the same kind of a friend or family member to other individuals going through something similar. You don't know until you know. And I was there. in the middle, looking around, kind of being that silent witness and saying, what is going on? Is this how we love on one another? Is this how community and relationships work? And this kind of, feeling of being abandoned and being isolated extended into these other circles of communities. So remember, I was saying earlier, it's not just like friends and family. Sometimes when I say, the people who are in your circle, it depends on what demographic you're talking about. What discourse community are you talking about? Because we belong to so many of them in our everyday existence. And so each one of these, not just one, not just two, all of them collectively, I was still going out, I was still working, I was still going to different social community things. So was my husband in a lot of cases. And it was all of these different networks. The support was like, some well wishes and, if you need help, just let us know. But there was a lot of not even offering help. And I can remember one thing in particular was in our church community. We weren't new, but we were newly starting to try to talk to different people. And I remember going out in a particular setting and the conversations, they weren't meaningful. And that was kind of something to me where I just said, maybe this isn't our group of individuals that we want to connect with on a deeper level. But they were individuals that were really connected into the church community and the surrounding community. So a lot of different resources and support that we really needed during this time, they knew about these things and we didn't know about them. So when we finally brought up a couple of things that we were kind of struggling with, the conversation just kept getting dismissed and then bringing back to these meaningless types of topics that they were talking about. And it was this really weird experience that I was like, what is going on? It just felt very bizarre, almost like you're in a dream where things are surreal and this isn't happening. And then afterward, people got really uncomfortable passing us at church or running into us in the community. It was like they would pretend like they didn't see us. And it was like, wow, this is really, really weird. So I didn't make anything of it. It kind of sucked sometimes when I thought about, okay, let's go to church this morning. And then I was like, ugh, everybody's going to avoid us like the plague, which is an awful feeling when the thing you want and need the most is community. And here you're trying to go into this space. And I know we don't go to church just for community, but community is a huge part of the church experience, that fellowship. And there were a couple of people who would, seek me out or seek us out and talk to us. So it wasn't completely all abandoned, but the people who, I'm talking about who we were kind of connecting with, that became really, really awkward. And it wasn't until 9 months after that happened that one of the individuals who was the one who actually invited us out to this outing kind of pulled me aside and was like, I'm really, really sorry. I thought you were going to ask us for money and we just don't give people money. And I'm looking what would make you think that I was going to ask for money? Number one, I was kind of I was coming across that way. Here we are suffering. We're just talking about things are really hard. He's going through cancer and they really wouldn't even let us get into anything, deep about his experience or our experience as a couple. And so I was like, okay, that's a you thing, not a me thing, because, as I self-reflected while she was saying this, I was like, I don't know that I ever did anything that made her think that. So then I let her finish. And then I said, I'm really sorry that that's what you thought. That is not at all what we were looking for. And I reiterated some of the things I just talked about, needing a sense of community and needing support in other ways. But I walked away from that thinking, wow, here you are, a person who knew all of those different things. And you knew maybe that we might need financial provisions or other things that tie into financial types of things. You knew we needed different support and you didn't say, hey, you should go this way, or you should go that way, or you should consider this or whatever. You just completely got this feeling, this hunch, and you were like, yeah, no, they're going to ask us for money, so we're bowing out. And so it was this really weird thing. It gave me that ick feeling. So when you start to think about what are the reasons why I don't ask people? What are the reasons why I don't rely on people? Well, it's because this was not an isolated incident. It causes us to kind of withdraw inwardly. And for me, it caused me to do that inward withdrawing and disconnect. And I even started to become stagnant, which is a thing. So when I was thinking this last week about what are some things, maybe not right now in my life, but there are some things right now in my life that I'm working on, but I'm thinking back to this time when I was really thinking about these particular things and that idea of stagnant. So when we become stagnant and we don't move, then it's not just setting up camp in the road. It's not just setting up like, okay, I'm going to live here in the middle of the road on my Exodus when the promised land is right there. But my past is right there too. And so all the things that were maybe in my old life or in my old living space, my old relationships, those are right there too. So I can just retreat, go back to those things and maybe get something that I think I might need, even though I'm no longer in that place anymore. I'm no longer in that place, and there's no reason for me to have to go retreat back into that place. That idea of being stagnant isn't even moving. So when we're stagnant, we're idle. Not only are we not moving forward toward that promised land and toward our goals, we're not moving at all. And so I was thinking about that is a real danger and a really slippery slope that we can get caught in, is if we start to withdraw so much and it starts to crush our dreams, and then that starts to crush our ambition, and then we just become idle. And then the things that we do are not at all related to us moving toward those goals. And the things that we say we're working toward, that kind of promised land concept. And so now fast forward, I'm sitting in the hospital the last few days with my husband, who's again sick, and now it's a heart issue. And I'm thinking about some of the work that I've put in to rebuild and restore some of the things in my life. In this same new round of things, now I'm getting a very similar rapid fire response to the text that I'm sending out because I can't call all these people. I've got doctors and nurses coming in and out of the room, and my husband's talking. Now my kids are calling me and other people are texting me also. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do a few group texts, and then I'll keep everybody up to speed on what's going on. And if they're texting me back, and those are those rapid fire, oh, here's some well wishes. We're praying for you. Let us know if you need anything. And that's it. And then there's something really interesting that happened. So remember, I said I learned from that experience when I went through it with my husband. And since that time, which has only been a few years, there have been some things that I said, I don't want to repeat things that way. It doesn't matter what happens. Bad things are going to happen in our life. We're going to go through difficult times in our life. We're going to go through things that might not be difficult times, but there are struggles in it. And we need to have things in place. We need to have a good support network that is fulfilling our needs the way we need them filled. And I made a decision back when I was assessing that and watching that, coming out of that, I was like, I don't want to go through it that way again. It's not enough for me to get those texts, those well wishes. And so I've done a couple of things. I've had a couple of really hard but important conversations with people I really care about to say like, hey, what happened there? Why'd you disappear? And I don't want that to be the way that we interact with one another. And so putting that time in, now fast forward to this experience, there are people who showed up for me in those ways. There are 3 people who called me right away. And I'm glad that not everybody called me. I'm not saying I want everybody to call me because that would not be also what I need. I need, again, a few reliable people to go beyond that text back, praying for you, love you kind of a thing. Let me know if you need anything. So beyond that, I got those kind of similar texts from 3 of the individuals who called me. So within the course of those few days that I was there, I get these phone calls, and they were very meaningful phone calls. And interestingly enough, one of them was a family member, and 2 of them were friends that I've accepted as family. Sometimes we are born into family, and sometimes we nurture family by cultivating good, meaningful, deep relationships with individuals that then become family to us. And so the interesting thing about these 3 different phone calls and these 3 different interactions is that power of 3. In other episodes, I talked about that tri-fold cord that we braid together and how when 3 come together, it is much stronger than if we try to just do things on our own. And so that struck me as interesting that it was 3. That it was 3, like the Trinity. And I was in a spirit of gratitude for these individuals and just recognizing the power in putting in that work. But prior to putting in that work, we have to be able to self-assess and then reflect on, well, I don't want to live that way. So we can't always just be like complaining, like, oh, this sucks. People did this to me, and this is how it always goes. At some point, we have to self-reflect and say, what is it that I want? And how is it that I could possibly get that? And we also have to be willing to be that same person to other people. So we have to put in that work. And then when it isn't reciprocated, we might have to self-reflect and say, maybe this person doesn't want the same thing out of these relationships. It's like a cycle that we get into that we have to go through because we have to process all those things. And then we have to put in the work. Again, there's that word that we have to do the work to then say, I want a different outcome. So this is what has to happen for that different outcome. And then to be able to stand back the next time something happens to say, wow, this is just the first experience that has been something that's been really, really traumatic like that. And then people are coming together. And that was really encouraging to say, okay, clearly there's more work to be done. There's always more work to be done. Relationships are work. They're regular work. And I'm willing to put that in. And it was exciting to see the people who came through that were also willing to put that work in, to have that place of intimacy and that meaningful engagement with me and my husband as well, to see people care about him and me and care about us as a family. So the other thing that is kind of like a slippery slope is that we can get stuck in this vicious cycle of feeling like we're stuck in place. So we're like spinning our wheels in the mud, and you all know that if you just keep spinning the wheels, you're just going to sink further and further and further. You're not getting out of that hole that way. There's a danger that we have to believing that we're the obstacle in the way, slowing everybody else down. We feel like almost like we're a burden on our own path, and we're not only in our own way, but that we're in other people's way. And it creates this chain reaction that makes us feel like we have to put ourselves and our own goals aside. So not only do we start to feel like we're in people's way, maybe we're getting beat up and getting trampled and shoved out of the way, but we start to actually internalize and believe that we need to like get out of the way, that we start to put our goals aside and put ourselves aside. And then if you can go back to that thing that I opened up with, which is like, I feel like I have to do everything on my own, that compounds it. Because now you're falling behind on things, or you're neglecting things that do require your attention. And they're really things that maybe you can't get help with, or people wouldn't know to help you unless you asked for the help, which you would have to recognize that you needed the help. And so that kind of compounds that vicious cycle that you get stuck in, where you're doing everything for yourself and you're not going anywhere. It's like you're running around. Like one of the nurses I saw last night when we were getting discharged, I felt really bad for him. And I was kind of relating to this exact thing where he was just trying to do one thing, discharge us. But in order to do that, he had to go through a few things, and I had a question, and then his phone's ringing, and then someone's in the hallway, like waiting for him, and like, hey, this person needs you over here. Well, can you go and take care of this? And he's trying to delegate things that are not even in his wheelhouse. They're not even his role, but people are like trying to deflect it because he's the guy who will just do it all. And so I'm watching him, and he's like, excuse me for 1 second. And he did that like 4 or 5 times. And finally, the 4th time he comes back in, he has to say to someone out in the hallway, I should be able to discharge a patient without being interrupted. This doesn't take that long. You're right. But there are things that I do have to get through, and I have to get through them with focus. And so it was kind of cool that I saw him do that. And he still was getting interrupted. And at that point, once he said that, he got to a point where he was like, boundaries. I got to put these boundaries down. But then I saw him getting pulled back in all these different directions, and he was just all over the place going back here. And I was like, oh my God, I can relate to that. I can relate to that, having to go in so many different directions, being pulled in different directions, and feeling like, my God, I'm one person. Like everybody cannot possibly need me and have to rely on me and be saying, well, you aren't prioritizing this important thing, or you aren't prioritizing me and I'm important. And you're literally like, what I'm doing right now is important. And if you would just let me finish it, I would be able to give you my undivided attention. And so I was really relating to, and his name was Matt, to Matt's struggle as he was trying to maintain his professional edge and do the things that were required of him in that professional capacity, and also to maintain his compassion and his patience. And it was very relatable to me. So another thing that I was thinking about in my own struggle is how I have over time and through several different experiences been conditioned after being let down by little to no support. So this lack of real human presence, tangible support, teamwork, sometimes it's a work-related or project-related thing, people tend to either flake out or they stop showing up. And, it's like that group project that you have to do in a college class where one or two people end up doing the whole entire project. And you're so aggravated. Not only is the other person on your team and your group not doing what they're supposed to do, not getting it to you at all, let alone on time. Or if they do get it to you, it's so minimalist and not at all what the assignment is requiring, that you have to redo it or do it all together. And you're so aggravated because this person is going to get credit for doing nothing or being an awful team player. And that's the type of people flaking or no longer showing up that I'm talking about. So I can put it in that context. It'll be a little easier for most people to be able to relate to. So another thing I was thinking about when I was thinking about what are some contributors to why I have this I'll just do it on my own mentality. I will get there on my own. Sometimes it's not about just doing it on our own. Sometimes it's about I will get where I need to go on my own. I will accomplish it on my own. I don't need anybody's help. And I know other people like that. Maybe I'm speaking to you as well. In my own experience, not only have had people that just don't show up or don't show up the way that they should show up, is this kind of grooming, for lack of better words, of people who try to get me to believe that if I help them reach excellence or achieve what they're after, then they'll help me. And so I had several experiences being a freelance editor and project manager where I was on these different teams and working with different individuals, and so many of them, they wanted me to be their right-hand gal. And of course they did. I'm a great worker. And I'm not just saying that to be inflated. I know I'm a good worker. And I put in the work and I find the answers and I go outside of myself to find the right answers. And in these different projects where people are saying, well, I will make you into something. I can make you into something. And they're exploiting me the entire time, every single one of them, without fail, asking me or expecting me to work for free or next to nothing, never a working wage, me saying this is what my wage is or this is what my rate is, and them renegotiating things, sometimes not even paying me my last bill. And some of these people are still in my circles. So I'm not saying they're my people. They're clearly not my people, but they're still there. They're still on my social media. They're still in places where I go to do other business. And it's really weird when we cross paths because I'm not only did you devalue my work, you also didn't square up with me. Talk about the worst kind of devaluing. And that's okay. I forgive, I make peace with it. And now that's for you to work out. That's not for me to work out. That's for you to work out. But looking at these people and thinking about how they try to insinuate that they could be my savior. I have one savior. And it is not a human being. That's kind of the last thing that I think about, why I just get to a point where I'm if this is what help looks like, I don't want it. Which is a really dangerous place to be also, because we're not supposed to live in a vacuum and do everything in our own ability. We're supposed to rely on networks. We're supposed to exist in community for everything in our lives, not just where we're struggling. But again, I'm recognizing why I have become a specific way and why I operate this way. Even now, I'm trying to dismantle some of that thinking and I'm trying to rebuild some of that thinking because I realize that some of this has kept me setting up camp on my own exodus, on some things that I'm working toward going into my promised land. And now I'm recognizing those things and saying, okay, we need to dismantle this. We need to rebuild this. We need to readjust our thinking and our actions to fall in line with that thinking so that we can continue taking those steps as we're entering into that promised land. And so I've been, really working on that through my own journey and recognizing that. So this idea of bringing in help and also lightening the load are concepts that inform my Cut Yourself Free analogy that I break down in Warrior Sister Cut Yourself Free, which is my self-help book that just came out in May in a second edition. And also it's a part of the Restore Your Inner Warrior self-help book that is connected to this podcast series. This not only applies to inner healing either, it also speaks to how we must tend to our physical worlds. So how many things in our real lives and worlds need healing? We need to ask ourselves that. I'm talking about the types of healing where things around and outside of us need healing style attention applied to them that allows broken or missing things to be repaired, rebuilt, and restored. How many of these healing aids and resources that we need exist in our promised land? So we keep talking about how we need to get things in order and we need to pack up camp, but how much of the stuff that we need is in the future, is in that future place, in our destination? And we also need to consider, what do we need to leave behind? What are we not supposed to carry with us on this rest of the journey and also into this promised land? What if our solutions are further up the path and actually in the promised land and they're not back where we came from and where we're not going to allow ourselves to go back or get stuck? So here's my advice to you. Stop retreating back. You cannot keep going back to where you came from or staying long-term on the path that is supposed to lead you toward those goals and not put you in a place where you're going to feel like you're getting trampled, defeated, or worse, where you get lost, where you have no sense of direction anymore, no sense of purpose anymore. So yes, it is work to heal our inner world and our physical one, but know that you're not alone. So you don't have to feel and stay stuck in this place of I'll do it myself, or I guess I'm all on my own. It's me against the world. No, you don't have to feel like that. And yes, of course, you do have to do some planning to plan ahead. Just like we plan a day, a week, a month, a year. Yes, we have those different things that we put in place. And so, yes, we need to plan things, and yes, we need provisions, but we won't have everything. It's like if you are going on this Exodus journey into your promised land and you know that your future life is going to be a completely different house, you can't bring and carry on your back and pull a trailer of all the supplies that you're going to need for the house. You don't need that yet. You know, the concept of putting the cart before the horse. You don't need all that stuff there. There's probably a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a Menards right there in the community, inside the promised land, where you can get that stuff not only, and you get free delivery because it's within 5 miles. So stop thinking that you have to have every single thing in place, but also with you in order to take the next leg of the journey, to go to the next stop. And just like it's good to plan ahead for certain things, we should also know and learn the course, so that we know how to navigate it. And then we know what we need and when we might need it. And then also, we are going to learn some things. There's going to be some learning things along the way. We don't know what we don't need until we need it, until we know it. And that's just life. We also need to bring some of those reinforcements and seek provisions. But again, some of that we're not going to know until we get there, or some of those things will be available where we're going next. We don't have to bring everything with us. It's like going to someone's house and you have to bring everything. You don't bring the furniture with you to someone else's house when you go for dinner. You bring dessert if they say, could you bring dessert? Okay? You don't have to bring everything with you. And that's probably one of the best lessons that I've learned. And maybe that's just my personality that allows me to have that inner calm, that kind of supernatural peace and calm that defies reason, is I'm okay with not having everything figured out. And I'm okay with getting someplace and like, oh, we need this, or oh, we need that. And even not maybe being able to get everything we need and then improvising and making do. And there's a lot of really interesting things and learning and growth and joy that comes out of that as well. I can think about times when we've traveled with our friends and we've had to do that. We've had to improvise, and we've had the most fun when we look back at what are the trips that we've taken that were the most fun or the most adventurous. And most of the time it's those trips that are the most memorable, because not only did those interactions and those experiences put us into situations that were a little bit foreign, that got us off balance a little bit, they forced us to improvise, but they forced us to grow individually and to grow as as a circle of friends. And that's bonding. We've been on more extravagant trips that we've had a lot of fun also. But really, when we look back and we laugh and we think about the things that really drew us closer, it was these trips that we took, that we had things that didn't go perfectly well, that we maybe didn't have everything we needed, but we made it work. And like, I can think of one thing, for instance, we went on a cruise when two of my daughters were really little and they lost her suitcase. We literally spent the entire trip dressing this 1-year-old cute little girl in everything we could make. Because the allowance that the ship gives you to buy clothes, we could buy her a few things, but it was like, am I going to spend this $100 to buy her one pair of shoes and one sundress in the gift shop on the cruise, or are we going to save this to get her a couple things when we're on shore? But we ended up not even spending all that money on shore for that, because we had so many provisions, headscarves and sarongs and different like flower things. And we look back at those pictures and we're like, this is epic. Like, this is not only epic that we had so much fun doing that, inventing solutions that people even around us, the larger group of friends that you make on a cruise, started contributing to it. So it was like all of a sudden the provisions were growing. We had just like this treasure chest of things to draw from. And then we look back also and we say that was clearly a foundational thing for this daughter, who is that type of fashionista to this day, who will do those things, who loves to find the unusual things and to bring them all together. And it's like, you can't look back at that and not say that influenced her. Even though she was a year old, that influenced her. And that was a foundational thing that would not maybe have happened any other way had we not been forced into that situation to make those provisions. And then we had fun. And was it frustrating? Yes. Her favorite teddy bear was in that suitcase, which thank God ended up showing up when we got off the ship in the lost and found section. But we didn't have it every night. So we also had to invent how to rock her to sleep and how to get her content without her favorite teddy bear. And so we made all of these things work. We worked around the obstacles and the struggles. And it's just one of those examples that just immediately comes to mind when I think about sometimes it's not the worst thing that can happen. Sometimes those are the best thing that can happen for all of these reasons. And I'm only sharing a few of them. I'm sure if we talked to each individual that was on that trip, they could agree with these things, add some more, which would then make me think of some more. But I'm just saying, like, this is a great example of how that works. And so over the course of this next week, I want you to consider what healing aids and alleviation you might need right now, wherever you are. So just think about that, where you are right now. You don't always have to be thinking about where you're headed, where you're going. That could be in your peripheral. So like, don't lose sight of that over here. Like, I can still see it. It's a little foggy because it's not completely in view because my focus is here. Right now, what is it? What areas do you need outside help and resources? What areas do you recognize need your attention so that the way before you can be rebuilt, restored, and maybe in some instances reimagined? What will you need to leave behind? You can't carry it all with you. You don't need to carry it all with you. What can you carry on this leg of your journey? So you also have to be thinking that the good pile, the bad pile, the stay pile, the go pile. Think about like when you're getting stuff ready for Goodwill. That same concept has to be brought in here. So maybe you're just mentally going through these things, or maybe you're writing these things down and you're making lists, but you need to go through the thinking. Whatever strategy you choose, be thinking about what are some things. It could be thinking, it could be objects, it could be interactions, it could be professional engagements, creative engagements, educational engagements. I know all of those things are things that are right now on the table in front of me where I'm making some very big life decisions myself and saying what has to stay and what has to go. And some of those decisions are difficult to make, and you really have to weigh them out, and you have to think about what is involved, what will I lose, what will I gain, and all those different things. I want you to be thinking about those, because next episode we are going to explore what to do once we take these initial steps into our promised land. So we're already here on the outskirts, we're walking in. We'll start to unpack how to take those small, actionable steps at different road stops in our Exodus journey and how to regroup and keep moving. So until we meet again, do not run back in the direction that you came from. Don't do it. There are good reasons that you no longer dwell in these places. Keep looking and moving forward, even if you're still doing the work to pack up camp and clear the path that you need to travel to reach those goals and to reach that final destiny of your dreams. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. If you haven't already, consider joining my Facebook group of women just like you, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to get tips, share stories, and find community support. And if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. As you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.